Welcome to the Disrupting Obesity podcast. I'm Charlotte Skanes, and I'll be sharing ways to regain control over your body and lose an extreme amount of weight naturally. Being fat is about so much more than just the food. It's about your relationship with food. That means that dealing with your weight is about more than just the food, too. You have to change that relationship. You have to start disrupting obesity. Ask Whatever 17 has a few more questions that I've been avoiding for a while, some from the very top of the spreadsheet. So keep them coming. Even if you're worried that I've seen it before, I really like repeat questions because I can go deeper and come at things from a different angle. So first up today is, how did you deal with feeling invisible to others, feeling overlooked and ignored? So this may surprise you, but I've always had a very big personality. I'm an oldest daughter. I'm an Aries. I was gregarious before I started to get heavy when I was around 8. So that just kept going. I was self-conscious about it, but I worked to compensate for my weight. I gave people other things to look at, like my hair or my purse or my shoes. I would try to draw attention away from my body. I still don't like having attention paid to my physical self. I really dig modesty. I think it's very relative though, but I respect everybody who wants its right to it. Just as much as I respect the right to not be modest. Like I said, I think modesty is a very relative concept when it comes to the way that we dress. But I'm really not shy. So I'm a fairly outgoing person, and I think that always helped. I was the funny fat friend a lot. I run in circles now where I'm pretty sure I'd still be considered the funny fat friend if they looked at things that way, which they definitely don't. But thin is relative, right? I've been the fat one at 137 pounds, and I've been the thin one at 220. It just all depends on the room you're in. But I also have been in lots of situations where my weight did make me feel invisible, overlooked, and ignored. And it's really hard to deal with, which is why it's nice that I had my great big funny personality to wrap around myself to help me compensate and cope, right? It hurt a lot. I built walls around parts of myself. I was funny and mouthy as like a preemptive defense mechanism because I felt left out. And I excluded myself from things too. Most of the time I internalized it. I blamed myself. I felt bad about myself, sorry for myself. I hated that I couldn't get my weight under control. I think though that I was more hurt when the salespeople started talking to me than I'd been when they used to pretend that I wasn't there. Right. And I get it. Commission sales are savage. And I had a long stretch there where the only thing I could fit into in many of these stores was just purses or shoes. I hit a point where even the jewelry didn't fit. So I always understood why they wouldn't talk to me when I was fat. It was par for the course, and I was very used to it. What I wasn't used to was salespeople paying attention to me, being friendly and nice to me. That took a minute. It was probably a few years before I could work my way through that. Just, find a way over it. I realized that the salesperson being super smiley and kind now doesn't know that I used to get treated like shit when I was fat. They're just dealing with the person in front of them, right? I'm the one bringing all that other stuff to the table. So I've struggled on both sides of this fence. How you handle it depends a lot on your personality. I might be loud, but I don't usually like confrontation. I saw Uma Thurman being interviewed, and she declined to answer a question in the best way I think I've ever seen. She said that she didn't want to answer right then because she's learned that when she's still angry about something, she tends to say things that she regrets later. So she's learned to wait. I think that statement applies to a lot of emotions, or at least it does for me. If I'm having big feelings about something, the best thing I can usually do is shut up. The bigger the feeling, the sooner I should probably try and get busy shutting it. I need to process things. I need to take a minute and figure out what's really going on and how I actually feel. I also have PTSD, so I live a fair bit of my life in fight or flight, and it's really easy to set me off. I'll say to my mom or Sean that I feel fine, but my body is just losing it. And that happens, pretty much whenever something sets me off, right? I get some really bad news or I get startled in some way, and then my body just decides I'm not okay. even though I've already worked my way through it, like I've processed it in my brain, because I'm not my body. I'm the thing that lives inside my body. And sometimes we're just not on the same page. Sometimes my heart's racing, I'm pouring sweat, my breathing is off. I call it an autonomic freakout. They're not a ton of fun, but they can be almost funny when I step back and watch it happening. Before I tell you this next question, but mostly before anybody comes for me for my answer for it, I want to preface it by saying that this is a variation on a question that I have answered before several times, because I know so many of you started at the beginning of the podcast and have worked your way through. I want to keep trying to answer all of the questions that you send in. And at the same time, I want to answer them in slightly different ways. So my answer hasn't changed, just the flavor. Uh, and since we're in a big funny kind of mood today, that's just the energy that I'm going to bring to this. So my maintenance TDEE is 2100. So I've been tracking around 15 to 1700 calories plus walking 45 minutes, 4 to 5 days a week for 2 months. There's no movement on the scale. Am I missing something? Yes, calories. Somewhere in your tracking, you're missing an average of 3,500 calories a week. I'm not pulling numbers out of thin air, and this one isn't specific to this particular question or person. A pound of fat is 3,500 calories. To lose a pound a week, you need to cut 3,500 calories from the number of calories that your body needs and that you ingest. We tell people 500 calories a day deficit because 7 times 500 is 3,500. Which brings us back to a pound of fat. And losing a pound a week is a very sustainable and attainable pace. So if your maintenance TDEE is 2,100 calories and you're averaging 1,600 calories a day, you should be losing a pound a week. If you're not, the most likely culprit is that you're missing those 500 calories each day when you're doing your tracking. This isn't a personal attack. 500 sounds like an enormous number of calories, but it's a lot easier to do than you'd think. And I really do mean this is not a personal attack. So here's an example of what I mean. This comment went up on a post that I did with a clip about plateaus. I was in a plateau. Your message made me take a closer look at how my calorie counting app was posting calories and macros. I was shocked to notice that I need to be much more vigilant about searching for the foods within the app. Not all are verified results, and some of them have incomplete information. Worse yet, some of them are grossly inaccurate. So there's that. I'm really not trying to be snarky. It is a horrible feeling when you believe that you're doing all the right things and the scale still isn't moving. Your app is telling you that you're in a deficit and the scale isn't moving. If you're not the problem, which you know because you're weighing your food, and please don't think for a second that I believe it's necessary to weigh your food all the time. We're talking about a very specific scenario here. 8 weeks without so much as a half a pound off? Yeah, you might need to make sure that the serving size information that you're using is correct. The difference between a tablespoon of peanut butter and a tablespoon and a half can add up in a very big hurry, which is a chance for me to be anything but snarky and offer up a starting place for the most likely offender when it comes to having your deficit screwed with. It's spread, sprinkle, pour. If you spread it, sprinkle it, or pour it, it's probably calorie dense, and it's also probably something that you like a lot of, right? Making this the perfect place to hone in on that deficit. Virtually all condiments fall into one of those 3 categories, right? Mayo, butter, they're 100 calories each, a tablespoon. Olive oil, cheese, ranch, these are loaded for bear with calories. And sure, it's only 50 calories here and 100 calories there, but you only have to do that a handful of times each day, and your whole deficit, or at least a decent chunk of it, just spread, sprinkle, or poured its way right out the window. How did you get started and how did you figure everything out? I feel like I'm drowning in everybody's do's and don'ts. It's frustrating and discouraging. It's a good question. I got started by doing what I thought my body wanted, but as a last resort. Nothing I'd tried has worked. I couldn't do it long enough. I had 200 pounds to lose and I knew it was going to take a while, but I felt like I couldn't even get started. Like I didn't keep losing 20 pounds and then gaining it back. I just kept gaining. So I had a real problem with night eating. I like to stay up really late. I've always felt my most productive after like 10 p.m. So I tried not eating after 6 and only eating during the day. I couldn't do it. And I don't think it was reasonable of me to think that I could, right? I was still up and working and watching TV until like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. 8 hours is a very long time to go without eating for anybody, let alone for somebody over 300 pounds and a night eater to begin with. I figured it out after I gained a little more than half of my weight back, but almost died a bunch, lost it again. I did loads of super boring research. I did an online program with Stanford Medical. I've spent years talking to thousands of people who are trying to lose weight. It's been a lot. And I really am doing my best to help as much as I can, because you're right to feel the way that you do. There are oceans of information out there, and it's massively frustrating and discouraging. Keep it simple. I mean, I'm obviously biased here, but I do feel like I'm cutting through as much of the bullshit as I can and making things as straightforward as possible. Can you do an intro on yourself? Okay, so this one's been on the spreadsheet for a while, mostly because I feel like I talk about myself too much as it is. So I'll do some quick stuff that maybe I don't talk about. I'm 45. I'm from Ontario, Canada. I met my husband in middle school, but we didn't become a couple until we were 17 and 18. We were together for 10 years before we got married. We have 3 sons. Our oldest just turned 11, his Harry Potter birthday, and our youngest just turned 8. I love to read, but I haven't had time to do it for about 11 years. I'm insanely uncoordinated. I hate horror movies, but I love period pieces. Yeah, that's some stuff on me. I guess the rest of it, I mean, you guys have all heard that stuff a million times, and you can find it pretty much anywhere, including multiple past episodes of this podcast. You lost weight while having young children. What practical advice or strategies would you give to parents trying to lose weight? I did. I lost the weight I gained back with 3 kids under the age of 4, which was kind of crazy. In some ways, it's mentally easier because you're chasing small kids and you've got all that motivation right at your feet, right? I desperately wanted to get the weight off, so it would just be easier to move and I wouldn't get so winded and tired all the time. I wanted to be a good role model too. That was really important to me, and it motivated me a lot. Uh, it, but I think it's also harder. Uh, Everything's harder when you have small kids, right? Um, but it's harder to lose weight, especially because when you have kids, in particular small ones, your focus is on them. And it's so hard to carve out time for yourself, plus the whole mom guilt thing, right? But to carve out that time and to have the energy to want to do it, to feel motivated, that's very difficult to do when you're exhausted all the time. The food part is hard too. The last thing you're going to want to do is add more food prep to your list. It's so much easier to just eat whatever they're eating, and that's not always going to fit into your calories. But that's the thing. It's the calories. You can eat exactly what you're feeding your kids so long as you're in a deficit. The big things for me were time and energy. Or I think you could maybe call one of those convenience, right? It was hard to find the time or the energy to want to do anything for myself over and above the massive list of shit I already had to do for everybody else. So I tried to make things as easy on myself as I could. I kept things around that were just quick and easy alternatives for me that I could throw together in a matter of minutes. This is maybe going to sound a little weird, but eggs. I can cook and eat a couple of scrambled eggs in less than 6 minutes, right? I like to chuck a scrambled egg on half a hard taco shell, maybe with some sprinkled cheese or something. I ate that daily as a snack when I was losing, when the boys were small. It's 97 calories. It's super filling because of the protein from the egg and the fact that hard-shelled tacos are whole grain, so they take longer to digest and they leave you feeling fuller longer too, which is more satisfying overall. I also made sure I cooked extra. I wouldn't cook one chicken breast for now. I'd cook a few. I'd have one for tomorrow and one for the freezer. I love my freezer. And I cook extra so I have one less thing to worry about another day. I really like loading food into tubs, labeling it, and freezing it. Prepackaged stuff, go for it. It's more, if it's more convenient, if it's going to save you time and mental energy, do it. There is nothing wrong with frozen meals either. I know they've got a bad rep, and the Gladyses have all earned their t-shirts by slamming things like TV dinner. But here's the thing, okay? Those processed meals have a calorie count you can figure out super fast because it's just written on the side of the box. So there's no guesswork there, and they save you time. They're very convenient. That stable calorie count, though, is essential, right? You can scan the meal that you're going to have for dinner first thing in the morning, and you know how many calories you're going to have to play with for the rest of the day. Just a little note. about those, like the microwavable or the reheatable TV dinner type things. I know the diet ones can be tempting, but before you buy them, grab the regular version and check the calories on it. The diet one and the regular one are often so close in calories because they've worried about, lowering the fat or lowering this or whatever else, right? So the calories are often so close that it's just not worth it. Eat the regular one. It's probably going to taste better and be more satisfying in the long run. Another little note on those, I used to double them up. I know some of you are thinking that that's just not enough food. It wasn't enough food for me in one of them either. I could easily fit a couple of them into my calories for a day though, right? Just do what you have to do. There's nothing wrong with prepackaged or processed foods. They're just a means to an end. Did you eat whatever you wanted, just less of it when you started? I sure did. And it drove people crazy, which I found kind of funny and delightful. It was like proto Gladys's, right? It would go like this. Oh, wow. You've lost a lot of weight. Thank you. How are you doing it? I'm eating whatever I want, but only at night. Yeah. So the proto Gladys, because most people were actually pretty cool with it, but proto Gladys wouldn't know which was worse, the whatever I wanted part or the only at night part. Confusion and disbelief were pretty common reactions. I was called a liar more than once. And I get it. It doesn't make sense to people, right? Especially then. It flew in the face of all the diet advice that was popular out there. This was the age of lots of small meals, no eating after 6. Atkins was kind of on the way out, but there was all the same bullshit snake oil then that there is now, right? The supplements and the fat absorbers, the pills and the shakes. Do you remember Dexatrim? I'd forgotten about that one. But yeah, I ate whatever I wanted, just less of it. And I lost 201 pounds in just under 2.5 years. You can eat whatever you want, so long as you're in a calorie deficit. Bacon and bubblegum all day, every day, so long as you're in a calorie deficit. I think I heard you say you did keto. Is that true? No, it's definitely not true. Keto never made intuitive sense to me. I didn't see how taking in that much fat could possibly be good for me. I just couldn't see it. I also couldn't afford to do keto, which is something I haven't heard a lot of people say. So I don't know, maybe I should have some deep-seated shame about that or something. But I ate a lot of food. Carbs are cheap. Carbs were a lot cheaper than fats or proteins when I was losing my weight, both times. I'm pretty sure they probably are still the cheaper of the macros now. After the necrotizing pancreatitis, etc., almost killed me, I had to be really careful. So I was in a follow-up appointment with one of my specialists one day about a year after I'd gotten home, and my blood work showed that I'd been in ketosis, and he lost his shit. So I make very sure that I stay out of ketosis. So keto was completely off the table for me when I lost my weight the second time, which didn't matter because it still didn't make sense to me. And after everything that my body had been through trying to get it to function on a restrictive diet like that, it really didn't seem like a great idea. I think the term balanced diet is overused, and I actually think it's pretty vague. Balance is relative, so I'm not quite sure what they're talking about. I think it's better to say, especially in today's diet climate, that you need a balance of macros. You need all 3 of them for your body to function optimally. You just do. Speaking of controversial food opinions in today's diet climate, what is your take on whole milk versus fat-free versus oat or almond milk? I think you should drink the milk you like. My dad grew up on a dairy farm, and I've got no issue with dairy products. I don't like it, though, when things pretend to be dairy that aren't. So we have rules about that here in Canada now. Like, unless it has milk in it, you can't call it ice cream. You have to call it a frozen ice dessert. But I don't have a problem with alternative milks either. I mean, they're not milk. Let's be clear about that. But there's nothing inherently wrong with them. As my first dietitian, when I got home from the hospital, explained it to me, they're basically water with a bunch of nutrients and flavors added to them. Which one has fewer calories? I don't cook with alternative milks, so I'm not really up on their calorie counts, but I would go with the lower calorie one. My understanding too is that some are better at certain things than others. So I would look into that as well. Like if the recipe calls for cashew milk and you use quinoa milk, I don't know if the recipe will still hold. I don't know if it'll still work. But somebody on the internet knows. So I would just pop that into Google. I've had people tell me that it just wouldn't be the same if I lost the weight. Yeah. I had people say stupid shit like that too. And it really sucks. Here's the big thing. And it's kind of the only thing, really. It's not about you. That's about them. People are going to say some unbelievably stupid and heinous things, mind blowingly stupid shit. And it's not about you. You might think it is. They probably think it is. It's not. Your weight loss journey is triggering them. Something is getting set off. Maybe they're afraid your relationship is going to change, or you will, or they're jealous, or they don't want the dynamic at all to be altered. Maybe it's about their relationship with food and their weight. They've got you painted into a role, right? The stereotypical one here is that whole funny fat friend we talked about with the first question. What's the role that you've played in whatever your larger relationship dynamic is? Not everybody's going to feel comfortable when you switch things up. You're going to get to know who people are in a hurry. And sometimes, and I'm sorry to say this, but sometimes it's your other fat friends who have the hardest time with it. That happens. Yeah. But again, this is about them. Unless you have a super secret plan to drop everybody you know as soon as you get the weight off, in which case maybe they're right and things won't be the same. But I somehow doubt that that's the plan. This isn't about you. How you handle it is going to depend on everything from the relationship itself to the way that you typically like to handle things. I would try to get to the bottom of it. What is it specifically that they're afraid of? And then I take it from there. Do you recommend using prepackaged foods such as salads? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Like I said about losing weight with small kids around, do whatever you can to make it easier. Just forget about Gladys. Just forget about it. The truth is that food prep is a massive barrier for a huge number of people. Not everybody likes chopping their own veg, Glads. I don't like doing it either. It takes time. It takes energy that not everybody's got all the time. A few questions ago, I talked about losing weight with little kids running around, and things like pre-chopped fruits and vegetables or salad kits are going to make your life infinitely easier. It's one less thing. And yes, Gladys, I know it's cheaper to do it all yourself. And yeah, it's only cutting up a few vegetables. But it's one more thing in a sea of so many other things. And with little kids, it's firsts all the time. You've never done any of this before. And it's really fucking hard. And taking anything off the to-do list is a very good idea. So lighten the load. You need to do that when you're losing weight, whether you've got kids or not. Losing weight is a lot. You need the mental time and space to work on your relationship with food, and doing tasks that feel punitive doesn't make the overall weight loss experience any easier. They actually make it feel torturous. That makes you want to give up. Losing a lot of weight takes time. You need to be thinking long game. You need to be doing things that are sustainable. Things like prepackaged salads. And I'm sorry, but I can't help myself. I'm going to say it again. Things like frozen meals or TV dinners with a set calorie count that you don't have to think about are also fine choices to make. And I'm not even talking about those diet ones. I mean the regular ones. And I know I just mentioned this, but the next time that you're tempted to buy one of the diet products, take a look at the regular one too. Check the calorie counts. Is the difference in taste and overall satisfaction worth it? I think you're going to be surprised there. This is a juice versus squeeze moment. If there's less than 100 calories difference between the two versions of the same thing, is it worth it? I'd rather find the calories somewhere else and have the one that tastes better. We have this tendency to assume that because something says low calorie or diet or healthy or all of these other terms, that it's going to be better for you, that it's going to be lower in calories. That's not always the case. A lot of it is just manipulation. How do you recover mentally and emotionally from a binge? You keep going. You tell yourself that you're going to do better next time. You give yourself a yardstick to measure better with, so it stops being this abstract concept in your mind and becomes a very tangible thing. Tracking your binges can really help here because it gives you a goalpost for next time. It can help to slow you down. This is a 3A thing: awareness, acknowledgement, accountability. You need all three if you're going to change your relationship with food. And you need to apply all three if you're going to get a handle on your binges and the feelings that they kick off for you. Awareness helps. You can't change what you can't see. So it's kind of a critical step here. I know this is the hardest part with a binge because you really don't want to know. I get it. I didn't want to know either. And I cried over a calorie count more than once. But you can't do better if you don't have a baseline. And there's a hidden bonus here too. It might not be as bad as you think it is. You could be beating yourself up for no good reason. I see this happen all the time. I'll be talking a client down after a food bender and we start adding it all up. And their 6,000 calorie estimate ends up being several thousand calories off. Awareness is better. Acknowledging what happened is better, but acknowledging it with facts, not feelings. The fact is, you went on a 2,500 calorie pizza and milkshake bender. So let's focus on that instead of the guilt and shame spiral that you're about to kick off that's just going to lead to another food bender. The fact is that 2,500 calories or 3,000 calories or 1,825, whatever your number is, it could be worse. And you can do better next time. You can get under that. I know, there isn't going to be a next time. Well, okay, I think that's a very nice thing to say, but it's probably not the reality. Has telling yourself you're never going to binge again ever stopped you from binging before? Why not have a plan instead, just in case? The plan is to do better. Knowing you have a plan is going to help you to recover mentally and emotionally. This episode's Good For You Gladys question of the week is brought to you by the entirety of the Happy Bottom Brigade. I'm not singling anybody out because there are so many of them, and I'm not going to draw attention to any one Gladys because I'm pretty sure that's what they want. So I'm not going to directly quote anybody for the reasons that I just mentioned. So instead, here is a composite of one of their favorite songs to sing. Somebody's a little fat to be handing out weight loss advice, aren't they? Yeah, no, seriously, it happens. And it would probably be hard for me to deal with if I wasn't hearing the exact opposite at the exact same time. Because I also get told that I'm too thin to be able to relate to being obese. I've been accused of doctoring my before pictures, and I've been told that I can't possibly have been the weight that I was. But I almost died. So I've got this weird perspective now where everything is just relative. It drives my big point nuts. He'll ask me something simple like, what's your favorite fast food restaurant? And I'll be like, well, it depends. And then he just gets so frustrated. Why can't you just give me a straight answer? Because whether it's your favorite food or how you feel about somebody's weight or pretty much anything else, it all depends on the situation and how you're looking at things in that moment. Weight is super relative too. I was telling my neighbor about a "you're still fat" Gladys when we were walking to the school to pick up the kids the other day, and she was horrified, which I really appreciate. But I said to her, if somebody has only ever weighed $105, my 137-pound body looks overweight to them. And yeah, I do know that it's been a minute, but I can still very clearly remember how skinny fat me would think I am right now. When I was 338 pounds, I would have told you that I thought I was too thin right now. So I get it. It's all relative. It all depends on the eyes that you're looking at me with. What I don't like about the "you're still fat" Gladyses is how mean it is. They're trying to be mean, which is why we've made it this far into the Good For You Gladys questions without me bringing this one up before. And I don't write this one down when it comes in. Personal attacks never make the list. In last week's Ask Whatever, someone had sent in wondering if I was going to do an all GFY Gladys episode. And I said I wasn't sure because I didn't want to feed into the negativity. That's also why I don't address this issue or keep track of it. But my neighbor's reaction got me thinking more about it, and I decided to share it with you guys today. Besides MyFitnessPal, where do you recommend to track? I've used Macros First a little. Anything with a barcode scanner is really useful. My favorite alternative to MyFitnessPal probably isn't going to be a very popular answer, but it's a pen and paper. I build out all my recipes that way. Keeping in mind too that I'm talking about tracking specifically for weight loss. So you just need to know the calories. If you're keeping track of your sugar intake or your sodium, your fiber, anything that your doctor might need, an app will be way easier than writing it down. Were there times where you thought your hard work wasn't going to pay off? No. Once I got going and I knew what to do, I knew I could keep going. The first time I lost weight, the time I lost the 201 pounds, I hadn't had any real success with weight loss before that. I just kept gaining. I tried a lot of things, but I couldn't stick with anything long enough to get the weight off. And I'd like to say that clearly this wasn't a me problem. I wasn't the issue. Once I figured out the calorie deficit part, I was off to the races. It worked. Eating at night helped keep me in a deficit. And so long as I didn't go over in my calories, I could eat whatever I wanted. So it wasn't me. Once I was handed a quote unquote diet that worked, I could do it. I could do it for just under 2.5 years and get all of my weight off in one shot. Then I kept it off for almost 10 years and I gained back about 115 pounds. So when I had to take all of that off, I knew I could do it because I'd already done it. I also knew I was mentally stronger than before because of the whole almost dying thing. And I had the added motivation of not wanting to almost die again. That helped to light a fire under my ass. But you can do it too. Even if you think you can't, you can. And I'd like to help as much as you'd let me. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to throw a little online party and answer your questions live for the first time. There's going to be a lot more information about this over on Instagram, but I'm not going to host it on Insta. You could also grab a copy of my free guide to getting started for the last time. There's my cookbook, my weight loss workbook. There's notes for all of those in the links. And then there's the program. That's my 53-week long immersive weight loss experience. And there's a link for it in the notes too. Thank you for your questions and for joining me today. Keep trying, keep tracking. Don't be intimidated and don't give up. You've totally got this. Thank you for listening to Disrupting Obesity with Charlotte Skanes. If you know it's time to take back control, lose the weight and keep it off, reach out to me privately with a direct message on Instagram that says ready, so you can start disrupting obesity.